1960s, a time of four lads from England getting their big break in America, plus also a time of unfortunate civil unrest when it came to racism and war. But out of everything that happened in the 1960s, one group would come and go in a short span of 3 years. One act, called the Mamas and Papas, originally started by folk singer-songwriter John Phillips and his young wife, which I mean, yes, his very young wife Michelle, but there was also two other folk singers, being both Cass Elliot and Denny Doherty. The story was that when they first started in 1964, John Phillips didn't originally want Cass in their group at the time, as his concern was that her voice, in his own personal opinion, was too low for his arrangements, and that her obesity would be a problem for the group's success, and that her temper was incompatible with his. Cass, who struggled with obesity all her life, and oftenly felt deeply insecure about her physical appearance, plus how people would perceive her as the bigger, set lady she was. A popular urban legend with the group involves Cass was that her vocal range was improved by 3 notes after she was hit on the head by some copper tubbing while walking through a construction site in the Virgin Islands one day around this same time. However, while in the Virgin Islands, John and his wife Michelle would write a song that eventually has become synonymous with not only a shitty Beach Boys cover from the 80s, where, Mike Love looked like a middle-of-life truck driver, but also became synonymous with the sounds of 1960s America, which the said song is California Dreaming. As a result of this, the group would have a string of hits like Monday Monday, I Saw Her Again, Words of Love, Dedicated to the One I Love, Creek Alley, and Dream a Little Dream of Me. But unfortunately, this success would go to the group's head, with a lot of infighting within the band about what creative aspects should and shouldn't be taken, jealousy between Cass and Michelle over both their love of Danny, drug and alcohol abuse, plus many other events which would result in their 1968 breakup. By 1970, John Phillips, Denny Doherty, and Cass Elliot had all gone solo with projects of their own, each respected choices, while Michelle would famously marry actor Dennis Hopper for a grand total of 8 days before divorcing. However, around this time, Dunhill, the record label the Mamas and Papas had been originally signed to, had started to demand them for another album as to finish off the original contract agreements they had signed back in 1965 when starting up as a new group at the time. The story goes is that if they didn't agree to their end of the deal, all members would be sued for around $250,000 each. So after a lawsuit and a countersuit between the band and their label Dunhill was settled out of court, to which it was determined that the band would be able to record the album under John Phillips's then new record label Warlock Records, which was distributed by Dunhill Records. John then wrote a collection of songs which was arranged, rehearsed, and recorded throughout the year of 1970 or 71, which then, depending on the availability of the other group members, to which the band members were rarely together at one time, and most tracks were dubbed one vocal at a time, unlike their earlier efforts of recording all together in one room. The album from those sessions resulted was People Like Us, released in November 1971, and famously panned by the critics and fans alike as a disappointment. Later on, written in the liner notes of a Mamas and Papas CD compilation, the then surviving members wrote that the album sounded like what it was, basically 4 people trying to avoid a lawsuit. So let's take a track list by track list look at People Like Us and see what went wrong or right. Like, was this good, bad, or misunderstood? We're gonna do this right now. Track 1, named after the album of the same name, this song has this really trippy feel, much like the earlier stuff, which is nice, but I feel as this seems more to be like a John Phillips solo project where the others are just there to back him up, and that's it. While it's a somewhat listenable track, unfortunately it doesn't deliver much here besides sounding like much of its time, like most of the songs are going to sound like on here. Before I jump on track 2, I forgot to mention that apparently John Phillips still hated Cass so much that he deliberately and supposedly turned down her vocals in the final mix of the album. I don't know if this is true 100%, but this is what I've heard from other reviews in researching for this video. Track 2, Pacific Coast Highway. The song is, what's the word? Oh yeah, bad, forgettable, early 70s trash. As much as we can criticize aspects of newer music and artists today, which I get that, but even back then, we still had some bad and awful songs like Pacific Coast Highway that has lyrics like,
look like a swan, a brown strawberry.
yes, these are actual lyrics, I shit you not. Track 3, Snow Queen of Texas, an actual good song from this album, believe it or not. Written by John and his future wife, Genevieve Waite, that has these really beautiful and stunning vocals on them by Cass and Michelle, and I assumed alongside Danny. I mean, that's all I gotta say to make this short and sweet. Track 4, Shooting Star, which this song has killer drumming on it. Other than that, again, it's a pretty average track at best. Track 5, Step Out, another good song that has good melodies and harmonies. Plus, it's actually catchy, no lie, even if it's got some 70s cheese sprinkled throughout its 3-minute runtime like the guitar, and its AM radio sounding licks being put out in the front, and the backings of Cass and Michelle being used to create this, what I'd call Tony Orlando and Dawn effect, where you'd have a guy, let's say Danny, John, or both singing lead vocals, while the women, Michelle and Cass, sing and do all the backup parts. Track 6, Lady Genevieve, a song that John wrote about his soon-to-be wife, Genevieve. I mean, it's a nice listen, but it's an otherwise generic love song with John cucking out over his lady. Nothing else to say here. Track 7, No Dough. It's fine, I guess nothing else to say besides me repeating myself. Track 8, European Blue Boy, another John Phillips and Genevieve Waite written tune. It's an interesting track in that it's got this calypso, Cuban-like inspirated mixed with calypso and Caribbean flute. Again, another song of its time, much in the style of other songs from around this time frame like Montego Bay and Mother and Child Reunion. Track 9, Pearl. Track 9 is a tribute to the then at the time just passed on blues and rock singer Janis Joplin, who had died at just age 27 and is now remembered not only for her powerful voice and stage presence, but unfortunately she is also remembered for being a part of the infamous 27 Club, which 3 other musicians also passed on around this time. They were Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones, guitarist Jimi Hendrix, and Doors frontman Jim Morrison. As a tribute, it's actually done respectfully and not in poor taste, considering Janis's sad life story and its untimely ending. Track 10, I Want to Be a Star, a song this time written by someone other than John and his future wife. But actually, this song, called I Want to Be a Star, was written by ex-wife Michelle, and as a song, it's an interesting story of what a person will do for fame within the Hollywood film world. Track 11, Grasshopper. Grasshopper is a song that, while has the classic signature Mamas and Papas harmony vocals that they were known for, here it sounds disconjointed, as you can clearly tell they were all recorded respectfully at different times doing their parts for the song. Track 12, Blueberries for Breakfast. The final track, again, much like most of the other songs here, have this very generic early 70s pop sound, but feels like this would have been ideal hit material back in 1968. But by 1971, it just sounds dated and tired. Maybe that's what they meant later on by the fact that it sounds like 4 people trying not to get sued. After listening, what are my final closing thoughts? While it's not the worst album I've ever heard, that title actually goes to Roy Orbison's 1979 disco album. But again, people like us, it's not awful. Like, overall, it's fine for what it is as a listening experience, minus some of the lyrics being the worst things I've ever heard written down on paper. Don't get me started on that Chuck Berry line from an equally sus man, one being John Phillips, who had, I don't want to get sued, but relations with his daughter when she was a teenager, and allegedly got her preggers, to which he later paid for her abortion. Or the fact that at this point in their lives, the members don't want to be near each other or record vocals together, which created difficulty in recording their signature sound, the one they were well known for. In my honest viewpoint, it's a fine listen, like I said, but this album is not one I would recommend for a new listener or fan of the Mamas and Papas music. After the album was released, the group's members didn't work together again, or as it seemed, But one tragedy would bring back 3 of its members together again one more time for a reunion, which I will explain now. Unfortunately, by April of 1974, Cass Elliott's health was fastly deteriorating as a result of years of yo-yo dieting and drug abuse, which resulted in her collapsing at the backstage of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson before she was to appear on the show, and had to be hospitalized for 4 days. After being released, she would then say that this was simply exhaustion in later interviews, and in the conversation she had with Carson during her next appearance on the May 7th, 1974 show, which this time she made it through the telecast. After all this, she was booked to perform her solo shows in July of that year for a 2-week engagement at the London Palladium, to which the shows were well received by the audience and critics alike, after which she felt elated by the standing ovation she received on the last night of this 2-week engagement, which was the Saturday night, being July 27th, 1974, after which she would then make an international call to former following member of the Mamas and Papas, Michelle, who was in Los Angeles at the time. During the call, Elliott would cry from happiness over her success at the Palladium, and finally being taken serious as the true solo artist she was, after years of trying and failing. But what happens over the last day of her life goes like this, simply. From the early morning hours of July 28th to the evening of the same day, she goes from event to event, like she first attends the 31st birthday of Mick Jagger at his home in Chelsea, after which she goes to a brunch in her honor presented by Georgia Brown. While there, however, according to her autobiographer, Cass was blowing her nose frequently, coughing and having troubles breathing, to which she was told to get it treated. But still, she went on to another party, this time a cocktail party hosted by American entertainment journalist Jack Martin. While there, it was noted that she seemed in high spirits but also appeared physically exhausted and sick. She then left that party at 8 p.m. that night, saying she was tired and needed to get some sleep from all the partying and shows she had done in the 48 hours since. She then goes to an apartment at Flat 12, 9 Crescent Place, later Crescent Square, in the Mayfair district of central London, then owned at the time by singer-songwriter Harry Nilsson, who allowed her to stay here and rest while in London for her shows. Sometime, sadly, during the night, she went to sleep and passed away from a massive heart attack at age 32. While this was a tragic loss to not only her fans, but also her family, sadly over the last 50 years since her untimely death, some people took it upon themselves to make up awful rumors and urban legends like that she died from eating a ham sandwich.
Mama Cass, deceased, ham sandwich.
However, this has been debunked by people that knew her, including her daughter Owen, who has said that these awful stories for years had hurt her mentally. I know you're saying, but where's the part about them getting back together? Just you wait. While at Cass's funeral, John, Danny, and Michelle saw each other again for the first time in years and spoke of one day trying to get the group together again for one last hurrah. This dream wasn't started up again until the early to mid 80s when John got together his children, including the daughter he, fill in the blanks, and Danny Doherty to start a newer version of the group, which, despite all their ups and downs throughout these times, this version of the group would last until 1998 when John Phillips would retire permanently from touring due to ill health and would pass on a couple years later in March 2001 at age 65 from heart failure. Danny sadly would also pass away in January 2007 at age 66 from kidney failure. As of this recording in 2025, Michelle is the only living original member of the group at age 81, alongside her temporary replacement, Jill Gibson, who's 83 as of this recording. Finally, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Please check out my other videos and subscribe for more future content. Until next time, goodbye.